True wealth is quiet, but outside Magnolia Quay Coffee, 3 multi-million-dollar supercars practically screamed for attention. A Hennessey Venom F5, a Czinger, and a rare Ford GT Mach 4. Vivian Ashford didn't even blink. She only saw the man opposite her, faded flannel and real honest engine grease on his wrist. Just a struggling single dad, the matchmaker had warned. 2 o'clock blind date. 11 minutes in, she stood. "I have a meeting." Her designer heels clicked past the glass, completely ignoring those 3 exotic cars parked outside. She walked right past them, never realizing he owned them. 40 minutes earlier, high up inside the Ashford Hospitality Tower, Vivian was ruthlessly acquiring a Beaufort estate. Her assistant pushed the final contract over. Vivian just signed it. Her phone buzzed. "Mother, Magnolia Kia 2, Marcus set it up." A proper Charleston gentleman. "Don't humiliate me again." Vivian just pinched her eyes shut. It was a corporate board review week. She couldn't stomach another exhausting family battle. She ordered her assistant to delay the 4 o'clock call. Let's step inside an old brick warehouse on Charleston's edge. Nathaniel Callaway knelt quietly beside a Hennessey Venom F5, hood popped wide open. He had been grinding right there since 5 in the morning. A Japanese car collector had patiently waited 2 whole years for this meticulous, hand-crafted engine calibration. Nate gave the torque wrench a quarter turn, deeply studying the dial. His daughter Lily sat beside him, happily swinging her legs and coloring with pencils. 3 cars under a sun, she held it proudly. Nate smiled, then checked his dial. His garage manager suddenly leaned into the open bay door. "You have got that 2 o'clock thing, boss?" Nate sighed. 3 years since Emily. 3 long years since he agreed to anything involving a fancy restaurant tablecloth. He only agreed because Emily's old friend asked, leading to a matchmaker who casually knew a corporate guy named Marcus Whitmore. None of it felt like a real reason, but he went anyway. He safely dropped Lily off at her grandmother's house on Trad Street. He kissed her little head, climbing back into his rusty 1998 Ford pickup. He didn't bother going home. His work flannel was honestly clean enough. That heavy engine grease on his cuff wasn't washing out in 5 minutes anyway. Right then, 3 Callaway Coachworks drivers were slowly navigating East Bay Street, delivering his clients' luxury cars to the showroom. The Hennessey, the Czinger, and the Ford GT Mach 4. A street festival completely blocked Vendu Range. His drivers parked along the curb outside Magnolia Quay Coffee, patiently waiting for his signal to enter the back lot. Nate never even noticed them outside. He had a rule. He never let wealthy clients see him driving their cars. Vivian got there first. She grabbed the best window table. The manager, Rosa, just waved her over automatically. She checked her Cartier watch. 2 o'clock exactly. Those priceless supercars outside were nothing but annoying obstacles, blocking her precious view. In walked Nate, faded flannel, dirty wrist. Vivian's first reaction wasn't even pure anger. It was arrogance. She figured Marcus sent some lowly mechanic just to test her, a cruel joke at her expense. Unfazed, Nate calmly pulled out the chair across from her. He tried to mention his little girl, but he never got the chance. 11 minutes in, she stood up. "I have a meeting." Nate stayed perfectly grounded. "See, true value stays silent," he nodded. "Put hers on my tab, please, thank you." "But you and I see the real story." Vivian heard nothing. She marched straight past that table, the window, and 3 parked supercars. Never even glancing back, she slipped into her luxury Range Rover. She just ordered her driver to pull away. By the very next morning, Vivian took her usual seat opposite her mother and Marcus, tucked inside an exclusive country club. She kept the details brief. The setup, she claimed, just wasn't the right fit. Marcus offered a thin, knowing smile as he grabbed his coffee. "I warned you. Good men are hard to find around here." Her mother sighed heavily. Vivian stayed silent. By noon, she returned to that exact same coffee shop for a high-stakes business lunch. The hostess spotted her instantly, guiding her right back to that identical window table she had abandoned yesterday. Vivian only realized the quiet irony once those menus hit the tabletop. Her corporate lunch lasted exactly 60 minutes and closed with handshakes. Once the clients departed, Vivian caught the waitress's eye and waved her over. She kept her voice low, asking about that ordinary-looking man from yesterday. She tried playing it cool. The waitress paused for just half a second. Then she finally answered, using a tone that felt very carefully measured. Mr. Callaway has been a regular here for 12 solid years, Miss Ashford. He always reserves this exact table. Vivian slowly lowered her cup. Callaway. I cannot discuss anything else about him, ma'am. The waitress bowed slightly. She held strong eye contact. She offered absolutely zero apologies. Vivian quickly paid the check, leaving her espresso completely untouched. Back inside her high-rise office, she typed Callaway Charleston into her search engine. The top hit showed a stark black web page with one simple white sentence. Callaway Coachworks strictly by invitation only, no phone number, no address. Zero flashy pictures. The next link was a Forbes article from 2017. Let's look closer. It described a hidden Charleston workshop restoring the rarest American hypercars in complete silence. Even journalists were firmly denied entry. She immediately dialed her head of corporate brand marketing. That rare supercar from our Big Island campaign last year. The Ford GT, who supplied it? Her marketing director answered instantly. Callaway Coachworks. They actually loaned it to us for free. The owner honors the Ashford legacy. Claimed he knew your grandmother personally. Vivian sat in stunned silence. Should I pull those ads, he asked. No, she replied. Send me every single photograph. The digital file popped open on her monitor. 12 distinct shots, a gorgeous custom coupe parked outside that luxury resort. With the river behind it, Vivian slowly zoomed in on the bumper. She had casually strolled past that exact machine yesterday. She had literally walked between two identical masterpieces. Gently, she placed her phone face down. 12 years holding that quiet table, a vehicle anchoring her biggest marketing campaign. An exclusive client list that famous financial journalists were forbidden to photograph. She wasn't furious. The sudden chill running down her spine felt much heavier than anger. It was the crushing realization that real worth is silent, and she just ignored it. Out inside his quiet city warehouse, his daughter Lily sat eating a simple half sandwich. How was your coffee date, Dad? Nate slowly wiped his hands on a greasy rag. I just ate a sandwich alone. Lily studied him quietly. She didn't ask another question. You and I see it now. She already knew exactly when to give that quiet strength space. She offered him half her sandwich. Nate quietly accepted it. 2 days went by. The successful CEO didn't call or write. By Thursday morning, she actually canceled an important board meeting. She cleared her schedule and drove to an address she finally got from a trusted private investigator. Real wealth hides well. Come with me. The hidden warehouse sat quietly by the Charleston marshlands. 3 stories of red brick behind a heavy hand-forged gate. A tiny bronze plaque, Callaway Coachworks 2009, no phone. No buzzer either. The gate just opened when her tires hit a hidden gravel sensor. Inside, the air felt as cool and spotless as a hospital. Polished concrete floors held 6 elite hypercars, all carefully taken apart. A dismantled Celine S7 and 2 Ford GTs. A Czinger on a custom lift, 18 mechanics in dark coveralls, no music playing. Just the steady click of wrenches and the quiet hiss of airlines working. Nate knelt beside an open 12-cylinder engine, deep in his work. He looked up as she walked in, no shock at all, he just stood. He calmly wiped his hands on a rag and waved her closer. He never asked why she showed up. He didn't fish for any cheap apologies. Instead, he guided her through the shop like any other potential business client. He discussed custom build times, matching paint to luxury yachts, and the long wait list. But he never dropped a single famous name. They walked up a steel staircase to his modest office. Just a basic oak desk and a simple black and white photograph on the wall. A long-haired woman laughing in the wind. Emily, just 2 years before getting sick. Next to it, 4-year-old Lily sat on a Ford GT hood, her little legs swinging freely. You can feel the regret. Vivian forced herself to ask the one question that mattered. Why didn't you say anything on our date? Nate kept his eyes away. He stared at Emily's photo. Because you had already made up your mind. I don't waste time arguing with other people's fast judgments. No bitterness or hurt in his tone at all. Anger would have let her apologize. His total peace was much harder to swallow then. A heavy door opened below. Lily's bright voice echoed up, chatting with her nanny. School was finally out. The girl bounded up the steps and froze at the door when she spotted Vivian. Hi, Lily glanced between her quiet dad and this woman in a sharp suit. Are you Daddy's customer? Vivian choked up for a second before giving a nod. Lily dug into her school bag and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. She walked over and handed it to Vivian with absolute focus, like offering an important document. "I drew this when Daddy went for coffee, 3 cars and a big sun." Vivian gripped it with both hands and whispered thanks. Lily dashed off to her nanny. Vivian and Nate walked down those steel stairs in complete silence. Standing at the heavy gate, she turned, ready to finally speak. Nate just shook his head slightly. "You don't owe me that, Miss Ashford." She drove home alone, gently placing the child's drawing on her passenger seat. She didn't dare fold it up, she refused to hide it in her purse. You and I know what she realized. True value isn't loud. She stared until the light changed. Before the week ended, Marcus got word. His assistant just casually brought it up. "Let's start right here." The CEO drove out to a private workshop on Meeting Street Extension, spent 2 quiet hours and told absolutely nobody. Hearing this, Marcus dropped his pen. The color completely drained from his face, and trust me, it had nothing to do with romance. 3 years prior, one of his shady shell companies, Whitmore Hospitality Solutions, had tried to commission a custom restoration at Callaway Coachworks. The quiet shop returned the deposit and firmly declined the order. Their polite letter simply cited irregular payment routing as the reason. Nate Callaway never bragged or pursued it, but he quietly kept the file. Marcus knew this because he was directly warned by a legal contact. 2 months later, that silent documentation remained sitting on a dusty shelf, carefully indexed by date. Marcus arrogantly assumed that hidden file would just rot there. But now the CEO of Ashford Hospitality had secretly visited that exact building. Panicking, he grabbed his phone and quickly dialed Harrison Pope, a senior board member he had buttered up over 3 loud, flashy charity dinners. "I am worried about Vivian. Hearing she might be entangled with some local vendor. We should be careful." He let the heavy silence sit. He did not need to say any more. A week passed. Vivian sent Nate a formal invite to the Ashford corporate fundraiser at the Charleston Place Ballroom. The invitation's wording framed him as a vehicle partner for their brand campaign. It was the quietest, most polite apology she could possibly draft, and Nate actually came. He brought Lily. She wore a pale blue dress, clutching a book on old Southern architecture. Finding a quiet velvet bench in the corner, she simply opened the heavy book on her knees. She stayed right there for an hour, looking up only when a server offered a glass of water. Meanwhile, Marcus loudly worked the bar. "Watch this." He introduced Nate to a major developer as just some charming local mechanic Vivian was helping. Nate just smiled, nodded, and stayed silent. 20 minutes later, Hiroshi Tanaka walked in, the famous Tokyo auto collector who waited 2 long years for his custom Venom F5. He spotted Nate across the loud room, set his glass on a passing tray, and bowed deeply. "Callaway-sensei, this is my true honor." The Hong Kong developer turned to Marcus, mildly asking exactly who Mr. Callaway really was. Marcus stood there speechless, so a wealthy woman from Geneva answered. "The only man in America I trust with my car, 2-year wait list." Vivian stood just 3 steps away. She had been quietly watching Nate. After that deep bow, she stopped looking at Nate. She watched Marcus. By the end of the night, little Lily slipped through the crowd, gently tugging Vivian's silk sleeve. "Do you want to see what I actually drew tonight?" Vivian softly knelt down. Lily showed her the architecture book, its corner folded over a beautiful hand-drawn copy of a wrought iron gate. "I really think you would like a gate like this on your building." Vivian touched the paper very lightly. "Which building?" Lily looked at her, completely surprised. "The one you are going to build." Vivian glanced up at Nate, quietly watching them from across the crowded room. He was not smiling. He was simply watching, exactly like a humble man observing something he refuses to disturb. "You and I know how this goes." The loudest guy, Marcus, ran off without even saying goodnight. Nate just offered to drive her somewhere quiet to breathe, though of course, he didn't phrase it that way. He told her, "There is a car outside needing one final test run before delivery. You could ride along." A Ford GT Mach 4, a masterpiece quietly prepared for a Naples client by morning. Nate never let anyone but his lead engineer touch his silent work, yet Vivian got inside. They rolled south off the peninsula, through Mount Pleasant, leaving the flashy city for James Island. Down Folly Road, the grand houses faded away, leaving only the marsh glowing under a half moon. Windows half down, salt air rushed in, real value needs no soundtrack, he played no music. She asked about Emily. Keeping his eyes ahead, he simply noted she was an architect. She designed the shop. I just keep it running, he said. Vivian sat silently for a mile. Then she confessed a truth she had kept buried for 15 long years. I never wanted to be CEO, I wanted to quietly work in heritage preservation. My mother refused. Nate let the heavy words sit without rushing. When he finally spoke, he just said, "There is still time." They hit the end of Folly Beach. He steered the Ford off the road, parking where the polished asphalt surrendered to raw sand. Engine off, the Morris Island lighthouse silently swept its beam across the dark water every 6 seconds. They sat on the hood in complete silence, feeling the hidden heat of the massive engine. The CEO had not sat on a car hood since she was barely 17 years old. Eventually, Nate spoke with quiet grace. "You do not need to explain that blind date." "I am not asking." She just watched the steady beam cut across the water. "I know," she whispered. "That is the hard part. You see, real substance never rushes." They drove back slowly along the seawall. He left the radio off for the entire return trip, too. Faint amber dashboard lights quietly traced his simple watch and the steady line of his jaw. Vivian stopped judging appearances. Instead, she just listened to the roaring engine and the wind. He stopped outside her high-end East Bay Street building, letting the powerful motor keep running. Uninterested in showing off, he watched the lobby light instead of looking at her. "You should pull the third-quarter maintenance reports for those Savannah and Hilton Head properties. Specifically, check the hidden line items routed to outside contractors. Do not mention my name." She turned in shock. He was already stepping out. A quiet gentleman. He opened her door, closing it securely behind her. He returned to the driver's side without a single backward glance. The Ford quietly pulled away from the curb, vanishing left at the very next intersection. Its engine faded down the dark street. Vivian remained frozen on that sidewalk for a long time. She delayed going inside. Once upstairs in her luxury apartment, she left the lights off. Stepping to the glass, she stared over the quiet rooftops of the old historic district. Down below, church spires glowed in a soft, understated white. Think about it with me. A man who stayed totally silent for 2 hours only to hand her, on his way out, a dangerous hidden thread she now had to pull alone. She barely slept 3 hours. She was at her desk by 6. At 6:15 in the morning, Vivian woke her chief financial officer at home. She demanded the hidden maintenance ledgers for Savannah. Hilton Head and Tybee Island dropped on her desk by 9. 3 full years deep, audited line. By 10, a pattern emerged. Not enough to indict, but plenty to start digging deeper. Just minutes past 10, reception finally called up. "Miss, today you and I are watching Rosa Delgado arrive. No appointment, just quiet resolve." Vivian had her sent up. Rosa walked in wearing a simple, unassuming gray jacket and neat black slacks. She didn't even sit. She just silently placed a wax-sealed envelope right on the corner of the desk. "I shouldn't be here, but my husband has been gone for 2 years. I have nothing left to fear." Vivian quietly opened the heavy envelope. Inside sat a single sheet, a plain photocopy of an invoice from 3 years ago. A formal request to Callaway Coachworks for the purchase of a used Ford GT, quietly routed through someone named Whitmore. Hospitality Solutions LLC. The signature at the bottom was Marcus Whitmore's. Vivian's hand went completely still. Rosa spoke next, her voice low and careful. "My husband, Mateo, worked in Mr. Callaway's legal office before he passed. He kept this safe. Mr. Callaway never used it against him. He said business shouldn't destroy a family. But I believed you needed to see it. You don't deserve these lies." Vivian looked up. "Why now?" Rosa held her gaze steadily. "Because you judged him too quickly that day. Mr. Callaway deserved far better than that, and honestly, so do you." Vivian thanked her with quiet formality, just like her grandmother used to thank the humble housekeepers. Rosa just nodded once, then left. People later noted she walked out just as silently as she had arrived. By noon, Vivian placed that hidden invoice right beside the maintenance ledger. "Let's look at this together." The shell company, corporate address, and bank routing all perfectly matched. She silently dialed her personal attorney, a trusted friend since their law school days. Then she called the 3 independent corporate board members she trusted most. By 3 p.m., a completely silent internal audit was officially set in motion. The audit team was instructed to quietly bypass Marcus entirely. Marcus, somewhere nearby, caught wind of the whispers and made a flashy move. He blasted an email to the whole board, loudly demanding an emergency session about the chief executive's supposed vendor conflict. He arrogantly believed he was striking first. Later that evening, Vivian's phone gave a single quiet buzz on her desk. It was a quick text from a number she didn't recognize. "Would you come hear me play piano Friday night? Daddy says you might be busy, Lily." Vivian quietly closed her laptop. She walked slowly to the window. The sun had dipped behind St. Philip's, leaving the city rooftops bathed in quiet copper. She pictured little Lily in that humble workshop, swinging her legs, quietly drawing cars in a sun. She thought about that simple, silent gift left on her passenger seat. She typed back slowly, "I will be there, I promise." She quietly set the phone down. For a brief second, her expression shifted in a way it hadn't in front of a window for years. She didn't cry. The genuine emotion moving across her face was subtle, quiet, and much harder to name. It was pure, quiet recognition that a bond was silently built by someone so much smaller than herself. And she intended to honor it. Friday morning rolled around, 30th floor. The executive boardroom faced east, looking out toward the harbor and the Battery. The morning light cut low and harsh across the long, polished mahogany table. 8 board members, 3 attorneys, and a single independent auditor. Marcus strutted in, showing off a sharp charcoal suit and green silk tie. "We know better, don't we?" He smiled and loudly showed off for 19 long minutes. "You and I are about to watch arrogance backfire." He loudly claimed Vivian gave a vendor special treatment. He smugly claimed it violated conflict of interest rules in the Ashford operating agreement. He dropped Noden's name for effect. Vivian just sat silently and let him talk. She let his performance finish. As he leaned back, she simply nodded to her lawyer. The audit binders went out, 84 pages each, stamped confidential, quietly prepared. 3 independent forensic accountants had quietly signed the front page. The hidden truth sat on page 41. Whitmore Hospitality Solutions, 47 hidden payments made over 3 long years. $4,712,000, quietly stolen from the Savannah maintenance budgets. Hilton Head and Tybee Island, all approved by one arrogant signature. Marcus lost his flashy swagger. His face went from cocky calculation to pale, quiet panic. He desperately tried to save face. Those were legitimate outside vendor payments. "I signed them as COO. The setup perfectly fits the indemnity clauses." Vivian calmly slid the second document onto the table. The Callaway invoice, showing the exact same shell company. The same address, identical routing numbers, quietly stamped 3 years ago. Signed by Marcus himself to quietly fund a flashy Ford GT in his name. One company, she stated with calm authority. 2 completely different uses. One to quietly bleed the business, one to hide a flashy car, both signed by you. You and I can spot defeat. Marcus's lawyer dropped his pen and silently walked out the door. The board chair, an 81-year-old shipping heiress named Eleanor Pinckney, told Marcus to wait outside. She did it with quiet grace. While he paced the hallway, the silent vote hit 7-1, including Marcus's own proxy. Cast by an assistant completely unaware they were voting to strip him of all his powerful titles. Freeze his accounts and quietly alert the FBI Charleston field office. When the door opened, Marcus knew it was over before looking at the table. Heading out, he turned to Vivian. He tried to sound tough, his voice echoing in the space. "You really think a lowly mechanic can protect you from the Ashford name?" Vivian didn't stand up. She didn't even need to raise her voice. "You never bothered to learn what he quietly builds, Marcus. That's your problem." He left. 10 miles away in his quiet workshop, Nate knelt by the very engine he'd been carefully calibrating. His phone sat on the greasy workbench next to his tools, resting silently on the home screen. He only checked the screen every 20 minutes. He didn't bother to call her. He didn't text her either. He had quietly pointed her toward the hidden truth. The rest was her battle. He quietly understood that. True partners know when to step back. He knew she had to walk through this door alone. Even when the man who quietly built her case was waiting right there at 3:15. Meanwhile, young Lily in her plaid uniform practiced her silent discipline, rehearsing Claire de Lune inside the quiet music wing at Ashley Hall. She stumbled on the middle phrase during her first try. Her tall, silver-haired teacher didn't scold her. but quietly asked her to start from the top. Lily started over. She played it perfectly on the second try. Friday evening arrived. The elegant recital room at Ashley Hall held 40 proud families and one grand piano. Warm yellow lights spilled from old chandeliers. The program was neatly printed on heavy cream cardstock. You and I know real value is quiet. Lily was fifth. Nate arrived early, taking his third-row aisle seat. You and I know true worth is quiet. He kept the seat empty, folded the program, and waited. The busy executive hurried in right before lights dimmed. She came directly from a grueling 4-hour press briefing. Still wearing her work blouse, its collar now slightly creased from the demanding day. She slid into the empty seat beside Nate, completely silent. He quietly passed the program. She accepted it as 4 other kids played. Vivian ignored the music, instead studying Nate's steady hands resting upon his knees. He held them perfectly still. Then little Lily walked out. Simple white dress, black ribbon and hair pinned neatly back. She bowed gracefully, sat at the piano, adjusted the bench one single click, and gently placed her small fingers onto the keys. Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the room until her left ring finger accidentally brushed the wrong key halfway through. That stray note softly shimmered and resolved. Lily's anxious eyes flicked toward the third row, searching for her ordinary father. His silent, steady nod gave her strength. She played flawlessly until the very last chord slowly faded away. A heavy, reverent silence hung in the hall before the loud applause finally erupted. Lily stood, bowed quickly, sprinted down the aisle, and threw her arms around Nate. Then, completely unprompted and without even checking her father's face for permission, she turned from his embrace and reached right for Vivian. Pressing the hand to her cheek, Lily whispered, "I played that song for you. Seeing you and Daddy sitting together like that, it just felt so right. Notice this shift with me." Vivian didn't sob. Her shoulders shifted once while her expression stayed unchanged. One single quiet tear slipped down her cheek, vanishing into the collar of her work blouse. Nate didn't even look at her. He just reached into his jacket, pulled out a freshly pressed linen handkerchief he silently maintained, and laid it on her knee. She gently took it but never raised the fabric to her face. Outside under yellow streetlights, Vivian noticed Nate's 1998 Ford pickup parked directly beside her expensive Range Rover. The two mismatched vehicles looked completely stranded right beside each other. "The oldest cars in this whole lot," she asked him softly. "Why don't you drive any of the fancy cars you build?" He avoided her gaze. "Those flashy ones are just for others. Emily used to ride inside this truck. I brought newborn Lily home in this exact seat. I could never replace it." Recognizing his hidden depths, Vivian nodded. She asked nothing else and drove home alone. She pulled over 3 times driving back. Once entirely lost in thought, she sat through 2 green stoplights. Once resting along the shoulder of Calhoun Street. And finally outside her own luxury building, hesitating long before shifting her car into park. Inside, she gently placed his simple folded handkerchief on the counter, right beside Lily's drawing of cars and sunshine. She didn't put either item away. 10 full days passed. Marcus Whitmore lost every corporate position following a swift unanimous vote. The FBI field office formally opened a federal investigation. Marcus's personal accounts were quickly frozen for review. The Post and Courier buried a tiny piece deep inside the 3rd business page. Vivian refused to brag or comment. Her office released one sentence: "Our firm is fully cooperating with the federal investigators now." She quietly stepped back from daily operations, though she never resigned. "Let's take this away together." She hired a transitional CEO for 12 months to privately rebuild her true personal foundation. "You and I know true value is quiet," the board agreed, instantly boosting her market standing. After a long silence, her family finally called her. Her mother asked, with rare, careful attention, if she was eating. She quietly told her mother she was. She quietly bought 4 adjoining brick houses by the Cooper River, 1823 antebellum construction. They were partly derelict, held for 60 years by a Charleston family through 3 failing decades. She silently placed those deeds into a new nonprofit. Naming it the Ashford Heritage Foundation, she made herself the quiet, unpaid president. Nate offered formally in writing to donate all the wrought iron work, gates, balcony railings, stair balusters, and sconces. He flatly refused payment. The short note attached to the offer simply said, Consider this Emily's contribution. She would have loved this block. They quietly worked together 3 days a week. They never called it dating. Eating sandwiches on those front steps, they quietly debated hinge sizes and the exact thickness of restoration-grade window glass. Nate brought his foreman to one meeting. Vivian brought her architect to the next. Slowly, a shared vocabulary built between them. This is what matters. Two people silently building one solid thing side by side without negotiation. One Saturday afternoon in October, Vivian quietly took Lily to King Street Books. Nate was busy with a long appointment with a Dubai client. Lily selected a thick antebellum design book and another exploring South Carolina ironwork history. Vivian paid for both. They strolled down to Marion Square, finding a shaded, quiet bench. Lily opened the ironwork book, reading aloud slowly, stumbling over 2 of the longer words. Vivian patiently let it go. Soon they reached a chapter on hand-forged gates. Lily leaned her head sideways against Vivian's shoulder, quietly staying right there. Vivian held completely still, just resting her arm along the back of the bench. She didn't embrace the child. She left her hand near Lily's hair, silently offering presence without pressure. 40 minutes later, Nate walked across the square from the direction of his workshop. He spotted the 2 of them from the far corner. He did not call out. He stopped on the brick path just 5 steps away, standing there for a long, quiet moment. Let's look closely here. His daughter was resting on a woman who, 6 months earlier, fled a coffee shop in 11 minutes. He let that unseen picture last another half-minute. Then he quietly stepped forward and said his daughter's name. Lily looked up, but she didn't move from Vivian's shoulder right away. 6 months after those audit binders hit that long mahogany table, the Ashford Heritage Foundation quietly opened its first restored block to the public. The ceremony was quietly small. 20 chairs, a wrought iron gate by Callaway Coachworks, a simple cream ribbon, and a modest jazz trio out back. Vivian wore a simple pale gray dress and low heels. She stood unassumingly at the gate, cutting the ribbon herself. Lily stood right beside her in a white dress, holding a small magnolia bouquet. Nate arrived 10 minutes late. He wore a dark blue shirt buttoned to the collar, skipping the tie. He stood silently at the back of the crowd, completely avoiding the raised dais. A Charleston magazine reporter gently asked Vivian about her unseen relationship with Mr. Callaway, a quiet, knowing smile. "We are building something," she said. "Not quite a family yet, but definitely not nothing either." The reporter documented every single quiet word. Once the flashy ribbon-cutting and loud speeches finally faded away, Nate, the single dad, walked with Vivian and Lily back into the historic district, far from the spotlight. Turning up East Bay Street, they paused instinctively right in front of Magnolia Quay Coffee. Rosa spotted them through the glass before they even arrived, pulling the heavy door open. Without a single word, she led them straight to that exact same window table. She served Vivian a cappuccino, Nate a dark espresso, and Lily a hot chocolate with extra foam. Setting the warm cups down, she gave a respectful nod and quietly stepped away. Let's look out that window. 6 months ago, 3 ridiculously expensive supercars demanded attention right there. But today, only 2 humble vehicles rested quietly at the curb. An old 1998 Ford pickup and a black Range Rover sitting together in the sun. Lily sat quietly between them, opening her heavy ironwork book on the table. She flipped to a specific page, marked simply by a cream ribbon from her bouquet. She pointed straight at a modest gate covered in forged leaves and looping vines. "I want our gate exactly like this. Can it be, Daddy?" "Can it, Vivian?" The 2 adults leaned closely over the pages together. Their hands brushed over the book. The successful CEO gently touched his rough hand. Neither pulled away. No flashy declarations, just a silent, meaningful connection built right there. For 1 second, Vivian remembered that disastrous 11-minute blind date from 6 months ago. She had marched past those incredibly expensive luxury cars back then, completely missing the point. She smiled softly. The single father noticed. He didn't ask her to explain it. He went back to the page. "You and I know that silent, unshowy effort is exactly why they finally found each other." The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow across those 2 ordinary parked cars, and the modest little brass plate right by the door.